All right, thank you all for coming out. And wasn't that great words from Governor Moore? And I do want to recognize, is Sophia in the room? Sophia, raise your hand real quick. I was talking. Sophia and Paul are the leaders that really have coordinated this event, and I'm so happy about it. And just want to have a brief conversation a little bit about, what does it mean, like the words that he put forward. I think we brought Governor Moore to come speak to us to give the award because he's really highlighting what is possible in an environment where people feel like there's so much ground we're losing. And I just wanted to get some other perspectives on this. And so I was very excited to have Shalanda and Rey come and speak to us. And I wanted to try to start off with a question, just get right into it. Shalanda, it's based on your experience managing the federal budget. What do you see as the long-term implications of the big, beautiful bill, of the cuts in government workforce? And, in what can we do to deal with this kind of, at least current reality?
Well, one, you I agreed to come here because the Joint Center, just like the governor, if you ask me to do something, I will do it.
Appreciate it.
Some of you may or may not know I was not the first choice to lead the Office of Management and Budget, but with the Joint Center at your back, all things are possible. So thank you personally for the help. Sometimes you work and you toil, and one believes their resume is the thing that gets you over the finish line, but sometimes you need friends
Yes.
to remind people that you are there and willing to serve. So I want to thank the Joint Center and add my thanks that the governor gave for all the help you gave me personally to help run the Office of Management and Budget. And if you think Westmore is something, Don is even more. So you got to see half of the power team, and I needed to hear the governor today. So thank you for letting me hear that, because watching what my former agency is doing, it's like, put me in, coach. This was my moment. I was supposed to be with my family. I said, after 24 years of government service, like, I'm relaxing. I'm not watching the news. I'm not a soldier for anybody. And they have drafted me back in. Because who can be silent when you see this? And done behind this veneer of Christianity. I look for the Bible verse, I shall take clothes and food from people. I'm still looking for that verse. We literally have a moment now with the government shutdown where we're running out of money for food assistance, what we used to call food stamps, now SNAP. They're sitting on $5 billion that's supposed to be used for this moment. And they are playing political games with whether or not they fill states' coffers with that money. It's not even illegal, like how we funded troop payments. I'm all for it, but it was illegal the way it was done. This is a legal, required way to ensure people don't lose food assistance. That's on top of what we saw this summer with the big, beautiful, whatever we're calling it, where we will have future cuts that are now baked into the SNAP program, that are now baked into Medicaid, where 16 million people will lose health insurance. This isn't Shalanda's number. This is Congressional Budget Office. Like, believe the people we hired to do this nonpartisan work. You see these attacks on institutions. You see them going after the Smithsonian, going after the Library of Congress, going after the Congressional Budget Office, because those are the arbiters of truth. It doesn't just stop at our history. It stops at our people who do scorekeeping and economic data. They don't want the Bureau of Labor Statistics to put out real data, because it would show that the tariff regime is costing Americans jobs and raising cost of living. It's all throughout. It's a strategy. They use the 4 years out of office to come up with all these things, and they had a name for it, Project 2025.
Yep.
And turns out that is the Bible for which we see all of these actions going. But we have to deal with this time through facts. Like, we know this is a made-up crisis with SNAP. We have to get on television, talk about what is being done for political reasons with facts, and ensure reporters and others who frankly sometimes take talking points and fact sheets from the White House as if their goal, and talk to people about what the truth is, and ensure that Americans don't suffer needlessly by these just, frankly, unchristian way of going out of one's way to ensure that people lose assistance that they shouldn't have to because of manufactured political crises.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, Ray, I want to hear a bit from you as president of the Nathan Cummings Foundation. I mean, one, any response you have to the words that Governor Moore put forward, but also, how is one of the leading philanthropic organizations dealing with this moment, and maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the Nathan Cummings total asset approach to work.
Sure. I've known Wes for a long time. I'm not going to respond to what he had to say other than say I agree with him.
Okay.
So there's nothing to really add to that. But I want to talk a little bit about him and kind of introduce a couple of topics. Our approach is an integrated approach that is racial, economic, and environmental justice. That's what we focus on, right? And so when the hullabaloo came with the new administration, and I'm not going to make this political, and I'm actually not permitted to be political, but people were asking me, well, how are you responding? And what I said, and I meant this very respectfully, is I said, what we have to be careful about is spending our time responding to someone else.
Yeah.
And there is a danger because then that means they're dictating what gets focused on. And so what it means is, where is your focus? And so our focus stayed on racial, economic, and environmental justice. I also happen to be a lawyer. And so people were running around and lawyering up. And I also happen to know what lawyers charge, all due respect. And I said, the first thing you do is not hire a lawyer. The first thing you do is understand what the law requires of you. And I said to our board, we're going to follow the law. And there are two relevant laws: Civil Rights Act and the 501c3 regulations coming from Treasury about what I'm permitted to do. But I do have the most incredible law, which is the Constitution, is to speak from a First Amendment perspective. And I said, they don't want to take that on in court. And if you notice, that's not what the cases have been about. So some people were self-editing themselves. They were going to their websites and pulling things down out of fear. And I said, you're doing exactly what other people wanted you to do, was to react and to respond. And one of the things is, I think we actually have, whenever there's a problem, there's always a flip side. And so I was just telling my team the other day, I said, I take a blank sheet of paper and I draw a line through it. And I say, on one side, list the problems. Now notice human behavior. If you do that exercise in your organization, you probably have, there's all this energy for problems. Everybody will list all the problems. What's broken, what's blah, blah, blah. Long list. But now look at the other side of the ledger, and all of a sudden people get quiet because they have a hard time thinking about where the opportunities are. So I call it the M&Ms. If it's a problem, you have to mitigate it. If there's an opportunity, you need to maximize it. We do not spend enough time on the maximizing side where there are opportunities. And one thing I just will throw into the conversation, and we're involved in this, is AI, for example. So the danger is looking at that issue from only the one side of the ledger, which is all of the problems, and to miss the low estimate of $7 trillion of economic activity and productivity that will come all the way up to $35 trillion. And do we want to be sitting here 5 years from now doing another disparity study, or will we have missed the moment to say there are opportunities for entrepreneurs, for our schools, for micro businesses, and how are we going to play in that game? So the last thing I'll leave you with for the foundation, and it's a visual image. I said, think of the world as having lots of gates. So think of a gate. I said, some gates are easy to open and they're there to let you in, and other gates are there to keep you out. Where do you spend your energy? So we literally try to focus on, how do we create gates that are easier to open? And I have lots of examples which we can share, but I don't want to get into it now. But the last thing I'll say is foundations have two primary assets. And the largest one is the one that is not galvanized. And it's called the 95-5% problem. So by law, we have to spend 5% of our money every year. And in many ways, that's easy. we spend that. Foundations must spend that by the IRS. But it's the other 95%, which is the endowment itself, which you can do whatever you want with. And the vast majority of them, so on the one hand, think of the craziness of this. You can be spending money to protect the environment, but with your endowment, spending money to pollute because you can get money from that. And so the ridiculous notion is, well, I am making money for you so you can spend it over here. So in my foundation, I control both. And so all of our money, and we call it the totality of assets approach, is for societal impact. Full stop. We were one of the few foundations to say 100% of our endowment will align with the grant side for these values. And that's how we spend it. And that is the hidden thing in philanthropy, which is not unearthed. And I think it's disgraceful.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really appreciate hearing, the opportunities you spotted, even just, for the foundation itself and how to, commit itself to making the change that it's supposed to be focused on. I'm just, be interested in hearing a little bit, Shalanda, about what opportunities you see, like during this moment. Because again, the headlines are always the problems, the crisis, and we do have to deal with that. But, what are the opportunities to engage in some of these issues that, many of these issues have been longstanding issues. It's not that, before 2025, there was, strong racial economic equality, and we were on a path of, providing for all of us. And so what opportunities do you see now in the current political discussion, political debate? Algernon Austin's here from Center for Economic Policy and Research, and we did a paper in, I don't know, it was 2024, 2023, about the best Black economy in generations and why it isn't enough. And I do think it's an interesting time that still, even with a creeping gradual increase in Black unemployment, Blacks still historically, relative to where we've been in the past, have stronger wealth rates, lower unemployment rates as a whole, higher income, and we have some of the strongest Black political representation we've had. So, and I think we've seen with Governor Moore, what can be done even in this context. We're just wondering, Shalanda, what opportunities you're seeing with the resources we do have today to make some positive change in this political climate.
One, you would not have heard us talk about equity and inclusion had we thought the government lived up
That's
to
right.
its promise.
That's right.
I mean, that's
That's why there was an equity and
that's
inclusion
right.
program, right?
I will never start a conversation with saying when we were there was perfect. Absolutely not. There's a difference between acknowledging, though,
Mm-hmm.
that there are gaps, and having programs and policies that try to close those gaps. There always be things that a White House and politicals don't focus on. Even this White House, which obviously came in super prepared to take on a lot of things and dismantle them, including the civil service itself. But there are programs operating quietly that I hope, continue to live under the radar and won't be dismantled and have to be rebuilt. But many of us, I'm in 10 conversations a week with people who are thinking through not putting stuff back. Like, if one wants to be optimistic in this moment, when things are broken, the most optimistic way to look at it is we now have a chance
To fix.
to put back together in a way that some of us always envision. Because when you inherit things that have been around for a long time in the government, it is nearly impossible to upend it and do business differently. You fool around with it on the margins, you tinker with it, you try to do a little bit here that moves the goalposts. But my most optimistic self tells me, there's a lot of harm happening now. But some of us who, whether we do public service from the inside or out, and we have an opportunity now. What would a Department of Education, if we had it all over again, look like? If we could develop it from scratch, we might have the chance to find that out.
No, I think it's a really interesting point about this idea that there is a lot of destruction, and in that, there's going to have to be a rebuild. And are we ready for the rebuild, and what type of rebuild?
Ready.
Yes, ma'am.
They have Project 2025.
Yes.
What's our answer to that?
Yep.
And this is the moment. It's not too soon. We're behind. What is the vision? Again, not put back what was. I don't even think that's an option. I've had federal jobs open that took me 3 years to fill. And then you have civil servants. How could they ever trust doing that again for the government? There's some people, they're not going to walk into this and think this is a 30-year how I end my career. We have to think about the civil service differently, how we bring people in. We have to think about how we, operate all of these programs. And we have an opportunity here. That's my most optimistic self. But I do think listening to the government, you have to make a case for why we do the things that we do. Why, when we see corners of inequality, why that's bad for everybody. And you can do all these great things. And what I found in our 4 years, all these great things, you can't communicate it to people. We have to win elections to do good policy. It's just a necessity. I've never worked on the political side, but I'm in this seat, not in my old seat, because we lost an election. Elections matter. And that is becoming clearer and clearer to me. One cannot do good policy at the level some of us got to do it without worrying about electoral politics and ensuring there are people with a similar vision working in this town. And frankly, in state and local governments, which is what I teach now. And I tell young people who want to work in government, they're like, what do I do now? And I'm like, have you met Wes Moore? Have you met Gretchen Whitmer? Go to California. I sat at the 20,000 foot level. I got to help work on a lot of local projects. I never saw them to completion. In a lot of ways, state and local governments have always done the hard work. The federal government can help or hinder.
That's right.
But, this is an opportunity for governors who are smart, like we just heard, to steal talent and to do a lot and be the petri dish for new ideas. And you're seeing that with a lot of Democratic governors across the country.
And again, I think state and local, even, no matter what's happening to federal, that is where implementation is happening. And I really appreciate the focus in on that. I know we're running out of time, so I just want to give each of you an opportunity to give, a closing statement, closing thought to this crowd, discuss it, as we, again, I was inspired as well by the words of Governor Moore. And I do think, it's important. Paul always says that Joint Center does two main things. We provide content and we do convenings, and each time I go to convening, I realize the power of it, right? So sometimes you need your own self-motivation, and then too, connecting with the people in the room and being reminded of all the good people out there doing great work. And so we just would love to hear a few closing comments, anything you want to share with this group.
Yeah, real quick. This is a moment that reminded me, going all the way back to the year 2000, and because I ran into a few of the alum, but I started an organization then at the dawn of the digital age. And I had a dream that low-income people would be able to be first in line for technology and not last in line. And I said, I want people to be online, not in line. And, Clyde Edwards is here from that. Dr. Nicole Lee is here. My first money that I got from the Hill with Jarvis Stewart, I made the smart choice to hire him, and I got money. But I only bring that up is because there are entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs in general that are seeking a yes. And they need somebody to say yes to them in order to get them started. And I had the same thing. And so those dreams, those ambitions, those skills are there. They're not known necessarily. They're not in the elite circles, but that's the future. And we've got to invest in that future. And one of the things I'll tell you that I'll leave you with that I did in the foundation that I'm really proud of is I remember what it was like to work in a basement, because we started it in a basement with 4 people and had people saying, you're going to go nowhere. And I built it to 100 people and raised all of that money. And so I've started a program that's called Venture Grants that enables us to get money quickly out to those entrepreneurs who just need that friends and family money, but they're everywhere. And so leave with the hope that they're everywhere and they're looking for the yes. And if we do better to work together, the future is bright.
There you go. So, do you have any?
So, one, I needed this convening.
Great.
I have an almost 4-year-old at home. Again, my intention in this part of my life was that was going to be my focus, and not, carrying her on one side and being on a phone call on another. But sometimes the moments have different ideas for you. And I know none of you in this audience will disengage, but the risk in this moment is people do. Because if I got to worry about like the last thing, this shock and awe, because that's what it is, it's a strategy. People don't know what to look at, what to focus at. And that is the hard part of responding to everything, because you start to sound like, nothing makes you happy. But that's part of the strategy that we have to work through. How do you respond when everything's coming at you? How do we get folks not in this room to not disengage? To know that there are people thinking through ways to make life a little easier when they have a chance at doing that. And I struggle with that, but I spend time with that. How when you think this moment is meant to turn people off, like, of course this is what the government does. This is what the government always does. And I worry about people's level of engagement when all you see is bad news and hard times. But I've had to remind myself what engagement is meant for, that it matters. And I think a lot of us have to think through how we make sure our friends and family back home, who have better things to do with their time than watch MSNBC and CNN all the time, how we keep them engaged and not completely disenfranchised and just, so overwhelmed that they don't rise to this moment when we have choices to select something better and on a path for this country, and how to speak to everybody who frankly deserve better than what they're getting in this country, and not see half the White House torn down for $300 million
Amazing, yeah,
ballroom
yeah,
instead of figuring out how we feed people
yeah.
in this country.
That's right.
So that's
Yeah.
that's what I was just putting that in.
And so I'm going to wrap it up there. I just want to thank. Well, first, let's give a round of applause to our panelists for ending this in the right way. I want to thank you all for coming out and for staying. This is the 55th anniversary of the Joint Center, and it's just every day that I'm here, I'm recognizing, more in depth the importance of the institution of Joint Center and why we need to have partners like all of you to continue to advance this work. And I'll just note again, I'm also very happy about this convening today, because I think I have my Joint Center speech for 2026 from the words that Governor Westmore. I love that, we were made for this moment because we were born in this moment. I was like, Dad, why didn't I think of that? I'm not, well, that's, I got to write that down. I got to get the video from this. And like, so any funders in the room, don't be mad if you hear this again in 2026. But, and also too, the most important thing about these type of convenings is the meetings beforehand and afterwards. I hope you all take advantage of the opportunities to meet and discuss. There's so many great, important people in this room, and look forward to more events with all of you in the future. So thank you all for coming out.